blowing up the news as well.
Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, author of the newly released book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life, available online from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Christian book distributors, Lifeway, Walmart, anywhere you can buy books. You can get my new book called The 7 Laws of Abundant Living. My shameless plug is now done, and I can focus on the Joe Newby Hour. Joe Newby, welcome to the program as we welcome you here on this first Monday of every month at the 12 o'clock hour as we talk about the Joe Newby Hour. You're the co-author of the book Banned, How Facebook Enables Islamic Jihad, and we've got a lot to talk about today. That is for certain. Joe, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me back on. It's good to see you again, and congratulations on your new book. I look forward to reading it.
Thank you very much. We're excited about the release November 21st. It comes out, but it's all over the charts and out there and
Good deal.
rocking and rolling. Joe, we have a full roster of things to talk about. We've got this shooting.
Yes.
We've got this shooting in a Texas church, which doesn't fit the profile of a Allahu Akbar, but is it beginning to look like it's an Antifa kind of? Give me an update. I've been on the air all morning. Give me the latest reports that you're getting there at conservativefiringline.com.
Well, from what I have seen so far, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of things being spread out on social media. And let me just say one thing about social media, Eric. You and I both use Twitter, but I got to tell you, I am convinced that Twitter is now the place where logic, intelligence, and reason go to die. I got to tell you, there is so much being spread on Twitter and on Facebook about people saying, well, this guy was Antifa. Well, he may have had a picture of an Antifa flag on his Facebook page. We don't know. Facebook has torn down his Facebook page. So, unless somebody can bring up an archive of that page, we will never know for certain. But what we do know is that he has liked a number of left-wing causes. What we do know is that, according to the Daily Mail, he was described as essentially a very militant atheist at one point. Maybe he still, was at the time of his demise. We don't know. And some of his former high school classmates described him as being very militant about his atheism, calling Christians stupid and this and that and the other. But then on the other hand, you have reports that this guy was some kind of I don't know, the media called it a Bible vocation teacher. I tend to think it was maybe something to do with Vacation Bible School or something along that line.
Let me back up for a minute. A militant atheist.
Yes.
Meaning that I am exerting extreme power in the representation of nothing?
The belief that nothing exists higher than myself. Yes, pretty much.
Well, this would be called the Democratic Party, then.
Exactly. Well, if you look at some of the Facebook likes that have been spread out by sites like heavy.com, yes, he did like some very left-wing organizations and causes, and there may have been, from what I've seen, quite possibly even an Antifa flag on his Facebook page. But we don't know, just how entrenched into this ideology he was at this point, because of course the folks over at Zuckerberg and company have taken his page down. What we have learned, however, from local authorities is apparently there was some kind of a domestic dispute between him and some of his in-laws. And from what I understand, his mother-in-law attends the church that he attacked. However, she was not there Sunday. So maybe there was something going on at home. You got to remember this guy, from what we do know, was court-martialed in the Air Force and drummed out of the service. he was court-martialed for domestic abuse against his wife and apparently one of his children, from what I've heard. So there's any number of possibilities here. Uh, could he have been perhaps influenced by Antifa? Who knows? The fact that he showed up in this attack wearing all black, wearing tactical equipment, makes me think that maybe there was some influence there, but I don't think we will ever know for sure what the actual motivation of this is
All
or
right,
was.
let me take you to another one, news related. Jake Trapper saying that first of all, to set the record straight for the audience, the words Allahu Akbar does not mean that Allah is great. It means Allah is greater. It is a relative term, setting Allah as greater than God. And yet, Jake Trapper on CNN says that it's a beautiful statement.
Yes. Yes, kind of like, this is shades of Obama talking about, the call to prayer in Muslim countries being a beautiful sound to the ears. Well, um, Jake Tapper, I understand sort of kind of what he was saying. He did follow that up with a statement to the effect that it's sad that we hear these types of things so often in these kinds of terror attacks. Nevertheless, he said what he said. And what got me the most about it is that after he said it, and after video was all over the place showing him saying what he said, including here at the conservative firing line, Jake Tapper came out and said, "Oh, I didn't say that." Wait, what? We've only got video of him saying this.
Right.
And he went after Fox News. He went after the Washington Free Beacon. He went after, I think it was the Daily Wire and a couple of other conservative outlets. But he was actually saying that it was a lie that he said what he said when we have video of him saying it. So that's kind of squirrely right there.
It seems each week there's another tragedy that we're facing, but these tragedies continue to also make us aware of just what corruption there is in humanity. This Harvey Weinstein story, this Kevin Spacey story. It's almost as if it was okay that everybody knew that there was this thing called the casting couch.
Right. That's only been around for like what, 100 years?
Right. It was all okay until somebody's feelings got hurt, or it was all okay. It was never okay.
No.
But
it was never okay.
But it was tolerated. The Kennedy White House was a revolving bedroom. It was tolerated. The Clinton White House was a revolving bedroom. This pedophilia connection with Epstein and all these are they just skate the surface, and there seems to be no depth. Wasn't there a time when a journalist's desire was to become the next Woodward and Bernstein?
Yes, I remember those days. I was a young man back in those days, and I remember Woodward and Bernstein going after Nixon in the Watergate years. And there was a time when people like myself sought to be, something similar to that. We wanted to get to the bottom of the story, regardless of, regardless of whose, drawers were turned upside down. Didn't matter. And to me, it still doesn't. And to a lot of others, it still doesn't. But I'm afraid that what we have now is what I started calling back in, I think it was 2011, I started calling it the Democrat media complex. And these people, yes, they have the word reporter in their resume, but I tend to think of them quite often more as operatives rather than reporters, because they seem to be doing more than anything else the bidding of two groups of people. One is Media Matters, and the second being the Democrat Party, because you'll notice that pretty much whatever Media Matters says, true or not, or spin or not, that's what a lot of these outlets go with. And Media Matters has prided themselves on being pretty much the force that drives much of what we see in our alleged news broadcasts at places like CNN and some of these other outlets.
I guess here's what really is starting to get under my skin. LA Times political columnist David Horsey body shames Sarah Huckabee Sanders, talking about her weight.
Right.
A man has been accused of over 100 counts of sexual impropriety, rape, underage pedophilia, and we're going to body shame the press secretary. You have
we have a Republican.
You have a man who rents a truck and drives through a line of bicyclists and kills people. You have a man walks into a church and kills over 20 people. You have Las Vegas, where a man opens fire on 20s of thousands of people. And you have a political columnist that is going to fat shame the press secretary of the United States of America. You've got Uranium One. You've got Hillary Clinton. You've got Donna Brazil. You've got these issues that say that America's depth of corruption, this deep swamp, this deep state that everybody's been alluding to, that while real live reporters are getting shut down, shot down, and accused of all kinds of improprieties, that you couldn't be a Woodward and Bernstein today and get away with it, because somebody's going to dig up something from your past and use it against you to discredit you because you're getting too close, which brings me to the bigger picture that says, Jeff Sessions, what is it that somebody has on you, my friend?
That's a very good question. And, you raise up a whole lot of interesting points, Eric, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you just said. There's an even deeper problem here in all of this. You alluded to quite a few of them. Talking about fat shaming Sarah Huckabee Sanders, they've gone even further than that. They have made fun of her Southern accent. Her and by the way, I've met her father. I met Governor Huckabee when he was governor of Arkansas. A very pleasant man, a very easygoing type of man, very approachable. But I met him briefly when I worked at a manufacturing outfit in north central Arkansas, and that was just a fluke thing, by the way. Very, very nice, very outgoing, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she is doing, I think, a tremendous job. But you got to keep in mind, we now have a Republican in the White House. Can you imagine the brouhaha that would have erupted had a conservative columnist done the same thing to, say, a Democrat version of Sarah Huckabee Sanders?
Right.
The Democrat media complex would be, they would literally be beside themselves. They would be demanding that this person be hounded out of business, shut down, silenced, fired, never to work again. This would not be tolerated if these kinds of statements were made against a liberal or a Democrat or a spokesperson for a Democrat administration. It simply wouldn't happen. But ever since Donald Trump has been elected, Eric, all of the rules of propriety have been thrown out the window. We are now living in a time when, well, evil is good and good is evil. And, these are the kinds of times that the Bible talks about.
Yes.
Good is evil, evil is good. You have people on Twitter for example, hundreds of thousands of people on Twitter who call for and demand the assassination of our president. But yet Twitter turns around and bans Roger Stone because he said something critical about Don Lemon. Come on. You have people threatening and calling for the murder of the President of the United States. Where's Twitter? Okay, Roger Stone said something mean about Don Lemon. Oh, we can't have that. We got to ban him. But yet liberals can say murder Trump, and hey, that's okay. Twitter is perfectly fine with that. You've got YouTube, Eric. Friends of mine who are YouTubers, like yourself. This is part of how they make their living. But yet YouTube shuts them down, censors them, flags their videos, demonetizes them, and forces them to go to someplace like Patreon, which, by the way, is a very good platform. I use it. But yet leftists can go on YouTube and put out some of the most vile garbage on YouTube, and nothing is ever done. Ditto with Facebook. Ditto with Google. We can go on and on and on and on and on. The hypocrisy of the left is simply astounding. And what we're seeing with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, what we're seeing with Jeff Sessions, I think is only a microcosm of all of that. These are all symptoms, I think, of a much larger problem. And the problem is that so many in this country have, quite frankly, turned their back on God, the God of the Bible, the Judeo-Christian God. They've turned their back on the principles that made this country great. And this is the result. This is what we're seeing. And it's only going to get worse.
When we take a look at the issues of the day, you've got the Donna Brazile expose in her book about the Hillary Clinton minute takeover of the Democratic National Committee, the virtually buying of the primary, completely funding it. We look at the Uranium One deal and the illegalities of the entire transaction, the Clinton Foundation. We look at the Mueller investigation. We look at Comey. We look at the RICO Act, for that matter, which is there are 35 crimes listed under racketeering, and all of them are being committed on a regular basis by the Clinton Foundation, including gambling, murder, kidnapping, arson, drug dealing, bribery, significantly mail and wire fraud are offenses according to the criminal law, racketeering influenced and corruption organization RICO law, which is a pattern. One crime's not enough. You have to show a pattern of at least 2 crimes. How many crimes do we have to have committed by the Clintons before we call it a pattern of criminal behavior? And I'm becoming extremely concerned as to why our Attorney General, why our Department of Justice, when Chaffetz, who I thought was going to be a brilliant voice for a legal position in Congress, disappeared, stepped down, it left one man standing, Trey Gowdy. And Trey Gowdy was my choice for AG. He was my choice from all the hearings. I felt he would have been a bulldog, tenacious. He would have left no stone unturned. He owed nobody liked him, so he didn't owe anybody in political favors because he was willing to get up in the face of anybody. And it could very well be that he does wind up as our AG, which would make me very happy. But I've got to ask the question, if the public is watching and concerned about North Korea, their concern about North Korea is because North Korea has the ability to make a nuclear bomb.
And deliver it. That's the important thing.
And deliver
It's not just enough that they can build the thing and fire it off, but they have to be able to deliver it. And now it appears that they have that capability, and that's what makes them a real threat.
And we're afraid of North Korea, but we don't look at the person that put the uranium, which the United States needs to refine to make fissile fuels for our arsenal of nuclear weapons in order to counter an attack from a rogue nation like North Korea. This goes back to, you took 20% of our uranium and you created a shell corporation in Canada, and you turned the uranium over to Vladimir Putin, the former head of the KGB.
Yeah.
And you said, look, you have relations with Iran, you have relations with North Korea, we have no controls whatsoever. You're an investor in the deal. It's a business transaction. This was signed off by Hillary Clinton during her tenure as Secretary of State. This is a criminal offense. This is goes against everything of national defense.
Exactly.
Why is nothing? And what is going on with Congress? Do we not have a Republican control of Congress? Do we not have a Republican control of Senate? Why is there not an outcry? What is going on that this country is allowing the likes of Hillary Rodham Clinton and her husband, William Jefferson Clinton, to ride roughshod over everything every American stands for, and nobody's doing anything about it? Do they all have Harvey Weinstein in their closet? What is going on?
That's a good question. That's a good question, Eric. I can tell you this. Part of the problem, I think, is the fact that so many of these establishment Republicans, people like John McCain, and there's quite a few of them over in the House as well, they simply don't like Donald Trump. And at this point, it looks to me like they are willing to sacrifice our national security just to get back at Trump. That's exactly what so much of this looks like to me. Recently, John McCain was asked this very question. He was asked, whether or not he was ever going to vote for or support something that Donald Trump has put forward, because so far he really hasn't. Instead, he's been going overseas, trashing the president. He went to West Point, trashed the president. Everywhere he goes, he trashes the president. Everywhere. Look at what he did to Obamacare after, 7 years of promising that he would repeal it, vote to repeal it. What does he do? He votes to keep it in place. But he was actually asked by a reporter on camera if he would ever support or vote for anything that Donald Trump supports. And if some of his opposition is due to the fact that he simply doesn't like Trump, well, McCain blew a gasket over that. He's like, well, how dare you ask me this? Rah, 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 rah. Well, his actions speak louder than words, Eric. I'm sorry. I've been watching this from the beginning. I've been watching this for years. I've been watching McCain ever since the 2012 election. During the 2012 election, you'll notice that he never once criticized Obama. Not really. It was my good friend. He called Hillary, my friend. He heaps praise all the time onto, the Clintons and the Obamas and the Democrats. Get him with the Democrat. Oh, my good friend, this senator, and my good friend, that. But what does he do to Republicans? He trashes them every chance he gets, every time he turns around. And you have so many others just like him doing the exact same thing. So I'm convinced that a lot of this is because of the fact that Donald Trump was an outsider who managed to break through, who managed to get elected to the White House because the American people said they were, they've had it. They're up to here with the establishment. They're up to here with the swamp, and they want the swamp drained. But the establishment isn't going to just roll over and let Donald Trump have his way just because the American people said they want him in office. Right. And I think that's a big part of what we're seeing here.
We're talking with Joe Newby during the Joe Newby Hour, with his time every month, the first Monday of the month at the 12 o'clock Central Time hour. Joe is the co-author of a book called Banned: How Facebook Enables Islamic Jihad. You know, the more we dig into these backgrounds of social media profiles, the more we find out that what Joe uncovered several years back is just as relevant and true today. And if you want to know how they did it and why they do it and what's behind it, you need to get a copy of that book. And while we're on break, get yourself a copy of The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, my new book, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. Visit Amazon, Lifeway, all of the book dealers online and pre-order your copy. It's due out on November the 21st, but you can get your copy ordered right away and have it shipped out in just a day or two. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about John McCain, because I have a specific question I want to ask you relative to John McCain. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere, and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. And we're talking with Joe Newby, host of the Joe Newby Hour, brought to you on the first Monday of every month, right here on Revealing the Truth at the 12 o'clock p.m. hour. Joe is the author of Banned: How Facebook Enables Islamic Jihad. Joe, welcome back to the program.
Good to see you again, Eric. Good to be here.
Joe, if we had a high-ranking official in our government who was diagnosed with a brain tumor and declared in writing that it was impacting their ability to make decisions, would we not ask for a medical evaluation, independent medical evaluation as to their ability to serve? We would do it with honor and dignity, regardless of the individual, whether we like them or don't like them, whether they're John McCain or not John McCain. Would we not look at whether or not they had the ability to serve in a leadership position as one of only two senators from an entire state?
Absolutely, we would, Eric. There's no question in my mind. But again, it's kind of like George Orwell's Animal Farm. Some people are just more equal than others. Earlier I told you that I've been following McCain since 2012. I actually meant to say 2008 campaign when he first ran against Barack Obama. And the only reason that I voted, well, there are actually two reasons I voted for that ticket. Number one was a former Arkansas or Alaska governor by the name of Sarah Palin. That's number one. And number two, I saw what Barack Obama was from the very beginning. I saw I saw that this guy was nothing more than just another warmed over Marxist who was going to spread more Marxism and socialism in the country. And of course I was right. And let me tell you, and your audience, a little story, if I may, about that, Eric. Here, I'd say about maybe 4 years ago or thereabouts, I would appear periodically on the local FM station here in the Coeur d'Alene, Idaho area. And the guy who hosted that program, this was a Christian-based station, Christian-based program, just right here in the local area where I'm at. And he told me that he had, in his work, in his previous work, he had been in touch with a lot of Washington, D.C. lobbyists and so forth, and they all made very clear to him, long before Barack Obama was first elected, that he would be the one to win, and it was already pretty much a done deal, and that he would win using means and tactics never before seen. And of course, that turned out to be true. It also turned out to be true again in 2012 when he ran up against Mitt Romney. And one of the things that I noticed in both the 2008 and the 2012 election, you'll notice that both McCain and Romney were, pretty strong during the primaries when they were going up against other Republicans. But then when the general election came around and they had an opportunity to really deal the Democrat ticket a death blow, if you will, and I mean that politically, of course,
right,
they backed down in every single instance. They backed down. Mitt Romney did an excellent job during his first debate with Obama. The second, every other debate after that is like, who is this guy? And it was pretty much the same thing with John McCain. And at one point, as I recall, McCain even suspended his campaign uh, so as not to hurt Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have had concerns about all of these people ever since. And to your question, directly to your question, I certainly agree that under normal circumstances, if any other member of the House or the Senate was found to be, well, there's no other way to put it, mentally incapable of doing their job, especially as a result of a medical condition like a brain tumor, such as what John McCain had, certainly uh, there would be calls for that person to be evaluated and, if necessary, removed from office. Like you said, with dignity, with honor. Yes, John McCain has served. We may not like what he's done, like what he said, so on. But yeah, he served. Give him props for serving. And here's your retirement check. Please go home and let's get somebody else in there who will do the job.
Right. Speaking of Congress, the Senate, the House, tax reform.
Oh, is that what it is?
What are the chances? We talked to Paul Nealon a lot, who is up in Wisconsin opposing Paul Ryan, who feels that Paul Ryan is the biggest sellout at Washington since who was the spy in the Revolution, Patrick.
Oh, now you're making me think.
I don't want to get him wrong.
Yeah.
Patrick Henry or Patrick Hale, one of the two.
It wasn't Henry. It
Yeah.
wasn't, but yeah, I know the person you're speaking
Right.
of.
You know that he's just been a traitor in Washington, and that the House has put out 434 bills, and the Senate's only passed 34. Congress is allegedly doing their job, but the Senate is falling down because of Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer.
That's sad, isn't it? That's sad. Here's the thing. We no longer have, in my view, constitutional conservatives who are fighters and serving us in Washington, D.C. Yes, there are some good Republicans there, but this tax bill, I don't know as how I'd call it reform at this point. When you have the top marginal rate actually being set at 46%, which is something that is not, generally known. There's a rate where, everybody up to a certain point pays a certain amount, but if you make more than $1 million, what they do is from the million, and I think it's up to about 1.2 million, they will actually tack on a 6%, a 6 or 7% surcharge to make up for the lesser amount that they paid in the first 45,000. Okay, I have never in my life known Republicans to actually support that kind of a tax increase, and of course that's going to open the door for Democrats and Republicans further down the road to say, well, hey, you were okay with the 46% increase or a 46% rate for this, bracket of people. Why don't we just make it an even 50? Why stop there? Let's make it 60. How about 75? How about we go back to pre-JFK days when it was what, 90 something percent? There is nothing at all conservative about this tax plan, in my view. And this is why we need to elect people like Judge Roy Moore, Dr. Kelly Ward in Arizona, Michael Snyder up here in North Idaho, and others to stop this nonsense, to go to Washington, D.C. and say, no, enough is enough.
Do we have I know we don't have the right people in Washington.
No.
I know we don't have the right support for our president. Do we have the ability to get a tax plan passed this year?
I think we have the ability. Whether or not it actually gets passed is something else. Keep in mind, we're coming up on two important holidays, which means Congress is going to be recessed for quite some time. So if Republicans are going to put something through, they better do it fast. I have heard that I think it's Representative King out of New York, I believe,
Yes.
who is not too impressed with this particular package. A few others have expressed concerns. I think at this point, the president just simply wants to get something done and get something out there. Yeah, I would benefit from this new plan. There are some good things in it. Lower corporate tax rate, which would be good for the nation as a whole. But there are some things in this bill that I don't like this 46% bracket, like the provision that gets rid of deductions for state and local income taxes. That bothers me as well. I have also heard rumblings that they're going to get rid of mortgage deductions.
Let me stop you there. Do you remember back in the early days of after the election that the White House press would put out statements and you and I would talk about them and we'd say, in essence, the point's good, but the presentation is terrible.
Right.
Okay. We're a year later and the message is good, but the presentation is terrible. Okay?
Right.
They led with state and local taxes. They should have led with saying we're upping the standard deduction so that you don't have to worry about itemizing state and local taxes because we're already including them in the deduction for you.
I tend to agree with that. Yes.
And
that
if they would have presented it to us like that, saying, hey, okay, you don't pay as a single person $12,000 in state and local taxes. Okay?
Right.
So what we're going to do is we're going to say, listen, all these things that you've been paying H&R Block to check mark for you. You have to get this copy of this and this copy of this and this copy of this. Hey, we're right there with you. We think it stinks. So what we did was we aggregated across the nation and we found out there were some higher plan places and some lower plan places. But what we did was we came up with a number we felt was going to be equitable and was going to hit about 80% of the population. And so we've come up with these two numbers, 12,000 and 24,000, and we think that should cover it. And
right.
Then say this, and if your state, under their state tax system, wants to give you a benefit back at the state level, because that's where your higher property taxes are coming from, is from your state level. We're moving this back to the state as part of our plan to move more responsibility back to the state. So what we're doing is we're going to give you the 80% sweep. You 20%ers, okay, need to go back to New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and California, because you're the 4 states that are most affected by this, and move your state legislators to give you an extra benefit on your state tax return instead of it being a federal decision, since it only affects 4 of 50 states.
Right. The only problem is that those 4 states are 4 of the most populous, 4 of the most liberal states in the country. In fact, there's a local election up here in Washington State where if it goes to the Democrat, which it looks like it may, the prediction is that you're going to see in state legislatures basically a wall of blue from the Canadian border all the way down to Mexico. Right now in Washington State, the Republican Party actually has a majority of one senator in the state Senate. If that goes to the Democrat, which it may, because it's in a district that Hillary Clinton won, If that goes to the Democrat, you're going to have Democrats essentially owning the entire West Coast. And to try to get some kind of, reform in any of those states is going to be literally impossible. When you look at what Jerry Brown has done to the state of California with his rules on, carbon legislation, for crying out loud,
Right.
Regulating cow flatulence, some of the other ridiculous things that he's done in that state. And you have,
But you know what, Joe? It's time. It's time that Idaho became the westernmost state in the United States. It's time. I think it's time. We've gotten to the point 50 states is too many. It's time. I think Washington, Oregon, and California need to go.
Well, the sad thing about it is, Eric, is that Washington State, it's weird the way that Washington is. If you're in the eastern part of the state to somewhere about midway in, it's fairly conservative. Okay, so, the Spokane area and on. I mean, Spokane, they elected Kathy McMorris Rogers, the vice chair of the Republican conference, and they've reelected her several times. Okay, but as you move toward the west, and when you look at the counties and how they vote, what you see is this giant sea of red, from the east to somewhere in the middle. There might be a little bit of blue here and there, but then up in the far up, northwestern part of the state, you have this, massive sea of blue, and that's where the vast majority of the voters are in Washington State, because a lot of this state is rural. It's farmland.
So California is going to have it on their ballot to secede. Is there an initiative in Oregon and Washington for the same?
I have heard that there are people who want that, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I do know that there are some who want to take Washington, Oregon, and California and have them collectively put together some kind of a weird, wacky carbon tax emission kind of a system in those three states. That they have worked out somehow or another, and how to bypass federal law and to get around the fact that Donald Trump has taken us out of the Paris Global Climate Accord. I have heard that, and there are a few people who want to succeed.
Yeah,
but
I would support a national agenda for us to give up California. I lived there for 7 years.
Yeah.
I lived outside of Los Angeles, a suburb of Los Angeles, for 7 years.
Right.
I have a great affinity for California. My daughter was born in Fallbrook. I adopted her under California adoption laws.
Right.
The most rigid in the nation, the most expensive in the nation. I could have gotten somebody pregnant and had a child for a couple of dollars or whatever it cost for a hotel, but it was almost $40,000 in total expenses over a period of time. California does not represent America. California represents California.
Well, the thing is, Eric, is that California doesn't represent even all of California.
No, there are three distinct. And it's very interesting to look at it. There's three distinct states within California, and maybe the divestiture of California would mean a reapportionment of three separate states, which would become states the size of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho.
Yeah, there has been, there's people that's wanted for Northern California to split off from the rest of the state. I don't know that any of those measures are going to go anywhere, quite frankly. And I can't see the state actually seceding from the Union. For one thing, succession has been found to be illegal since the Civil War. The second thing is that if California were to split from the nation, which I highly doubt, um, they would lose all of that federal funding. They would lose all of military protection that they
Right.
now enjoy. You take a look at Southern California. Like you, I lived in Southern California for several years, many years, both as a Marine and stationed there, and as a civilian. I lived there. My wife and I lived there for 8 years before coming up north. And if if California, let's just play what
Right.
if California seceded from the Union, you would have, oh gosh, you got one, two, fairly major, naval and Marine Corps installations. Those would be gone. The state would lose all of the economic boon from those. You have Air Force bases all up and down the state. All of those would be gone. The state would lose, their economic resources from that. You have naval bases in places like San Diego, San Francisco, and again, all up and down the coast. All of that would be gone. Air Force bases would be gone. All of these assets would be gone, and the state would lose income from that. How long do you think a socialist country like California would last with no support from a U.S. federal government?
I completely agree. So basically, what you're telling me is that the chance of seeing California secede from the United States has the same probability of me in my lifetime seeing Hillary and Bill Clinton in handcuffs.
Pretty much. That's a good
There
way
you
of
go.
putting it.
There you go. And that brings us to the conclusion of today's Joe Newby Hour with this great visual of Bill and Hillary in handcuffs, which is our desire, but the reality is we may not see that in our lifetime as much as we might like to see it. Joe Newby, thank you so much for being a part of Revealing the Truth, and our good friends at WND and W World Ahead Press who published your book. Great thank you to them for sharing you with us, and we'll see you again right back here next month for this next edition of the Joe Newby Hour right here on Revealing the Truth. And that brings us to the end of our live broadcast day, but that doesn't mean we go off the air. You'll be able to watch all of today's interviews and teachings all throughout the day until we're right back here tomorrow morning in studio at 9 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time with the next edition of Revealing the Truth. Until we see you right back here in Birmingham, Alabama tomorrow morning, we bid you shalom.